They called him the baddest man on the planet, and for a reason. When Mike Tyson entered the ring, he wasn't just fighting, he was hunting. Every stare was a warning, every step a threat, and every punch a violent promise. Yet despite the world knowing exactly what Iron Mike was capable of, some fighters still had the audacity to test him. They strutted in with arrogant smiles, running their mouths, taunting the man whose fists had ended careers in seconds. And what followed was always the same, a brutal lesson in why you never ever disrespect Mike Tyson. The first to learn that lesson was Andrew Golota, a man infamous for dirty tricks, low blows, and an appetite for chaos. Even before the opening, Golota looked like a man in over his head, refusing to make eye contact with Tyson, glancing down at the canvas as if trying to avoid awakening the beast standing across from him. When the fight began, Tyson pounced like a predator, pressing forward with a ferocity that left Golota visibly rattled. Tyson's punches ripped through him. One thundering right hand sent the giant crashing to the mat, blood pouring from a cut that opened instantly. Golota got back up, but each second felt like an execution. The bell finally came, not so much ending the round as halting a public dismantling. And then, in a move that sealed his place in boxing's Hall of Shame, Golota quit. He walked away after 2 rounds, the crowd booing, pelting him with trash as he left the ring in disgrace. Tyson had broken another so-called warrior, but some grudges ran deeper than a fight contract. Back in 1980, a teenage Tyson had watched his hero, Muhammad Ali, suffer a beating at the hands of Larry Holmes. Ali was aging, slowed by Parkinson's, yet Holmes showed no mercy. Tyson, just 14 years old, cried that night and made a promise one day he would avenge Ali. 8 years later, the opportunity came. Holmes, arrogant as ever, dismissed Tyson as unworthy, telling the press that Mike couldn't even carry his jockstrap. But Tyson ignored the insults, knowing his fists would speak for him. Just before the fight, Ali himself visited Tyson's dressing room and whispered, "Get him for me." When the bell rang, Tyson exploded, every punch a piece of payback for. That night in 1980, Holmes tried to jab and move, but Tyson's pressure was relentless. A right hand crashed into Holmes's jaw, sending him down. He rose, only to be floored again. And then came the finisher. Savage right hand that left Holmes sprawled on the canvas, unable to continue. Tyson didn't just win that night. He fulfilled a promise and restored honor to his idol. Not every opponent came in with history. Some simply believed the hype surrounding themselves, like Donovan Razor Ruddock, a man who had demolished a string of opponents with his thunderous left hook. Ruddock's confidence boiled over into disrespect, claiming Tyson would go to sleep and even suggesting that if Mike didn't die in the ring, the fight wouldn't count. In 1991, they met, and Ruddock came out swinging, landing a few sharp shots that made the crowd roar. Tyson, unfazed, invited him to hit harder. But once Tyson opened up, the difference was clear. He battered Ruddock with a mix of head and body shots that sapped the big man's will. By the 7th round, the referee had seen enough, stepping in as Tyson continued his assault. Ruddock's words had vanished, replaced by the look of a man who had been introduced to a level of violence he hadn't anticipated in 1986. Tyson faced another giant, Jose Revolta. The Cuban heavyweight believed his size would be enough to crush Tyson, his manager declaring that Revolta could punch harder than anyone Mike had ever faced. Early in the fight, Revolta's chin proved sturdy, absorbing shot after shot. Then came a vicious uppercut that finally sent him down. To Tyson's surprise, Revolta got back up, his jaw seemingly made of granite. But toughness only delays the inevitable. Tyson continued to break him down, each punch rearranging his features until the referee stepped in, awarding Tyson the TKO. Revolta had survived longer than most. Survival wasn't the same as victory. Jesse Ferguson, a veteran with a reputation for late-round strength, was another who underestimated the 19-year-old Tyson. Ferguson had even beaten Buster Douglas, the man who would later shock the world by defeating Tyson. But on February 16, 1986, Ferguson found himself trapped in a nightmare. Tyson's peekaboo style made him impossible to hit cleanly, and his counters came like whiplash. Ferguson resorted to clinching, trying to smother Tyson's offense, but it was useless. A brutal uppercut split Ferguson's nose, sending blood spraying as he crumpled to the canvas. Tyson had made his point, tooth, and experience were meaningless. When you were facing raw, unrelenting power, then came Frank Bruno in 1996. A muscular British heavyweight who seemed built for intimidation. Bruno was loud in his disrespect, promising to knock Tyson out into Don King's lap and declaring there was no way Mike could beat him. Tyson responded the only way he knew, how by charging straight into him from the opening bell. Bruno's early attempts to hold on were futile, and Tyson's hooks began finding their mark. In the third round, a crushing uppercut followed by a flurry of punches sent Bruno into the ropes. The referee jumped in, waving it off as Tyson claimed another victim. The man who had mocked him was left beaten, his threats now just echoes, sometimes. Revenge was personal. Carl Williams had beaten a young, inexperienced Tyson in sparring years earlier and never let him forget it. 6 years later, Tyson had transformed into the most feared fighter on the planet. While Williams remained a contender, living off that old story, in 1989, they finally met in the ring. Williams started confidently, using his jab to keep Tyson at bay, but in less than 2 minutes, Tyson landed a single left hook that ended everything. Williams collapsed, unable to beat the count. Tyson had erased the memory of that sparring session in the most definitive way possible. And then there was Francois Botha in 1999. From the start, Botha employed every dirty trick he could, holding, hitting after the bell, trying to frustrate Tyson. The bad blood boiled over when Botha landed a cheap shot, sparking a near brawl between the corners. But Tyson's patience was gone. In the 5th round, he found his opening, a thunderous right hand that sent Botha stumbling to the canvas. Tried to get up, but his legs betrayed him. It was over. Tyson's message was clear. Play dirty, and you'll pay in blood. Fight after fight, the story was the same. The trash talkers, the arrogant challengers, the ones who thought they had found a weakness in Tyson, all of them learned the hard way that there was no safe way to provoke him. His power wasn't just physical, it was psychological. The moment they stepped into the ring, they were trapped with a man who fed on intimidation, who turned insults into fuel, and who never forgot a slight. And when the bell rang, that fuel burned hot enough to destroy anyone in his path. Mike Tyson wasn't perfect, but in his prime, he was a force of nature, fast, ruthless, and utterly unforgiving. If you crossed him, you paid the price. If you disrespected him, you were lucky to leave the ring on your feet. And if you ever wondered whether you could beat him, the answer came in the form of a glove, traveling at lightning speed, carrying the weight of every ounce of bad intentions he could muster. That's why they called him Iron Mike, and that's why you never, ever piss him off.